Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another live episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. Today is episode 97 for week 8 of our NFL Raw Rundown. If you're new here, we do this every single week. We go through games that we thought were intriguing to us, and we go through and we just talk about it. If you're new here, leave a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to continue to make this content going forward all the way through the NFL season, all the way through the NBA season, and so on and so forth. And joining me, as always, the Stat King himself, Mr. McElween. How you doing?
Boy, oh boy, tonight, October 30th, 2023, a night that is cold and rainy here in Houston, Texas. I'm pretty sure it's fairly similar in Austin, Texas, as I was there over the weekend, and I might be there again this weekend, depending on whether or not I can get some tickets to K-State, Texas. Emmy mentioned all the other sports we cover. We do a show called Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, which is going to air 2 or 3 times a week. Most of the time, Emmy will be there. Sometimes it'll just be me alone. Other times, on rare occasions, we'll have other special guests. We might do it tonight. We might do it tomorrow night. We are starting this around 9:50 p.m., so we'll see where that puts us after this episode. So just keep an eye out for that. We have some great stuff to get to, but we have no time to waste. We've got Paper Pop, 5 games to talk about that we chose before the episode. But before we do all that, just like we always do, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, and let's start with Prospect of the Week.
Yeah. If you're new here, this is the segment where we pick a player from the recent few days who we thought, had, a huge breakout or stood out to us in some type of positive way, or it could even be a player that we think had an underrated performance or something of that nature. And for my player this week, I went with Joe Mixon. I think we're going to get to it later when we talk about that game, but Joe Mixon, I think, had a almost welcome back moment. This year has been rough for him so far, and this game going to San Francisco against that defense and averaging 5 yards per carry and being as impactful as he was, I think he showed an extra gear that I didn't know he still had. And the fact that he still has that in the tank is a really, really good sign for the Bengals. They had a balance to their offense that they just have not had at any point this season. And he was the reason. The run blocking was good, but he showed that burst that he has had throughout his career, and that little second gear when he gets to when he gets to the second level of defense, where he's able to break tackles and pick up speed. That's really where he shows why he's such a great running back.
I went with the running back as well, and it was actually pretty easy for me. I had to really rack my brain to think of somebody until I watched tonight's game. And I've been talking about him for a while. I've been talking about this team's draft class for a while. And tonight, Jahmyr Gibbs, the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft, had his breakout, which I kind of felt was coming for a while. It just was a matter of time. The game still has over 9 minutes left. The Raiders have the ball currently, but 24 carries for 146 yards, averaging over 6 yards per carry. Now, you can say whatever you want about the Raiders defense, but that's impressive. 24 carries, 146 yards, averaging over 6 yards per carry. He's got a touchdown, but not only that, he's got 5 catches for 37 yards, 7.4 average yards per catch through the air. So he's doing it all tonight, having a great game in prime time on Monday Night Football, the first Monday night home game for the Detroit Lions, and who knows how long. So It looks like Detroit's going to win that game, but there's still 8.5 minutes left. Detroit's up 26-14. Raiders at 3-4. Detroit at 5-2. Schefter reported that they obviously don't expect the Raiders to do much before tomorrow's 4 p.m. deadline. We will see, though, with the Lions potentially moving to 6-2, what the Lions might try to do at the deadline. But they certainly don't need a running back, as they now have 2 to 3 really, really good ones, as Craig Reynolds has stepped in to a bigger role with David Montgomery out. If you can get consistent production from Jahmyr Gibbs and you bring David Montgomery back, that's quite the monster in that backfield with that offensive line. I don't think we're going to talk about the Lions much in this episode, but we will be doing our power rankings, our new biweekly power rankings on Wednesday night. So be sure you tune in for that.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on it real fast. I think he's got juice. There's no question about it. Like the speed has been there, the extra gear has been there. It's just putting it all together. And I think the vision for the Lions was pretty clear. They wanted a Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram style two-headed monster type backfield. So I think the Lions might look back on, the Montgomery injury in a few weeks and see it as a bit of a blessing almost, because you were able to really unleash Jahmyr Gibbs, give him some confidence, give him some, I guess, experience as well.
Yeah, tonight's kind of been a show party for their offensive rookies, as Gibbs has a touchdown, but also Sam Laporta, their rookie tight end, has 8 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown. And their defensive players, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, and others have been, in on some plays as well. So
That
they're
defense
playing.
looks great. They've
They're
only
playing.
given up 7 points tonight.
Yeah, they've only given up 7 points. The other 7 was a pick six, I believe, by Jared Goff. And it's a way to rebound. I kind of expected this after what happened last week on the road in Baltimore. But with all that being said, if you're a Lions fan, we'll talk about your team, I'm sure, on Wednesday. We have 5 games to get to. Pop open the lower third for the first game between the number 1 and number 2 overall picks from this past year's draft, Texans and Panthers. Panthers squeaking it out 15-13 for their first win of the season and Bryce Young's first win as an NFL starter. Amy Nixon, your thoughts?
I think this is a game that I would be really interested to watch the all 22 of, because CJ Stroud, I thought, looked a little bit confused by whatever the Panthers decided to do defensively. And obviously, credit to them. They were able to, sorry about that. They were able to switch things up and show different looks. But CJ Stroud, he was holding on to the ball a little bit. It looked like he wasn't really trusting his eyes. And I think something the Panthers decided to do defensively was really what ended up giving them the edge in this game. And what honestly caught me off guard, because I thought CJ Stroud would have a really good day against this Panthers defense. And then for Bryce Young, he's looked like this the past few weeks. He had started to find himself, I think, right around that Panthers Dolphins game a few weeks back. And since then, he's been solid, and he's slowly starting to, adjust to NFL athleticism. Like, you're starting to see some of those, Bryce Young type of play extension plays, where he's stepping up in the pocket, making moves. I think as he continues to get more comfortable with the speed of the game, like, we're only going to see more and more. Like, he continues to show flashes of really good quarterback play. Like, in this game in particular, there was an out route to Jonathan Mingo where he threw it way before Mingo came out of his break. Mingo ended up dropping that pass, but seeing him throw with anticipation, seeing him, embrace the little details, is what gives you hope if you're a Panthers fan.
Yeah, interesting game. I didn't pay all too much attention to it while it was happening. I was just watching Red Zone, but you go back and watch a little bit, and you can see it. Let's start. I'll go team by team. Let's start from a Houston perspective because I believe it was just 2 or 3 weeks ago. This Houston team was 3-2, and all of a sudden, with 2 consecutive losses by 2 points in back-to-back weeks, for a variety of reasons, they find themselves sitting all of a sudden at 3-4, with the Jaguars all of a sudden hot as can be, winners of 5 straight. The Colts don't look too hot right now, but the Tennessee Titans, who we'll talk about in a little bit, may have found something at quarterback. So it's an interesting dynamic in this division. But I thought the Texans, just going back and watching the game, played a really rock-solid game on defense up until the last drive. When you look at what they were able to do on defense, they obviously the Panthers' offensive line hasn't been great all season, but for most of the day, I mean, Bryce Young was just trying to stay on his feet. You mentioned some of the play extension stuff. He faced immense pressure from this Texas D line. He was sacked three times, sacked double 3 times, 6 times. They generated pressure. You saw Malik Collins in there, Jonathan Grenard in there. The Texans had 9 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hits. I mean, they were in on Bryce Young. Grenard had 2.5 sacks and 4 quarterback hits. Collins had 2 sacks and 3 quarterback hits. They just couldn't get the stop that they needed when they needed it most. And you have to give credit to Bryce Young for his first game-winning drive. 15-play drive, 86 yards. He threw for 50 yards on that drive, looked really good. Set up Eddie Pinheiro's 23-yard game-winning field goal as time expired. Penalties hurt the Texans on that drive a little bit, but they just couldn't get the stop. Credit to Bryce Young. As far as the Panthers are concerned, this was big. You come off the bye week. You're hosting what has been a pretty good Texans team so far. They're coming in searching to rebound after, a loss last week. And Bryce Young did enough. His first career game with a passer rating of 100 or better. That'll get you out of a lot of stadiums. And he overcame. Like I've talked about this a lot, and other national pundits do as well. If you want to be the elite of the elite franchise quarterback type in this league, the top 10 quarterback type, those guys don't have to have it all go their way to win football games on a week in, week out basis. And he only had, they didn't have any sort of run game, not that I could tell, 24 carries for 44 yards. And he was pressured on 40% of his dropbacks, yet he was hitting Adam Thielen, who's been his go-to guy all season long. His, I believe, 6th consecutive game with 7 or more receptions, the longest streak by a Panthers receiver in their franchise history. You mentioned Jonathan Mingo. He was efficient, 22 for 31, 235 yards, kept his poise, threw a touchdown to Tommy Tremble in that second quarter. And he led a 15-play, 86-yard drive. So good for the Panthers. They come out of the bye. They really needed this. Good for Jonathan. Who's their coach now?
Frank Reich.
Frank Reich. Good for Frank Reich getting this team their first victory. We'll see where it goes from here. But yeah, I just thought really what it came down to was if you're the Texans, CJ Stroud struggled a little bit. He's been really, really good so far this year. He didn't have such a great game yesterday. But your defense did plenty enough to get you out of that game until that last drive, which is kind of deflating as a football team when that happens. But it is what it is. It was fun to see the two top two picks go at it. I feel like we've gotten that matchup the past couple years. And while this was a lower scoring game and neither lit up the scoreboard, I thought it was a good game to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let's move on to our next one.
That's going to be Browns Seahawks. I'll let you start.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this one was interesting because the first half felt like 3 games in one. It was 17-14 at halftime, I believe. And it really just felt like Geno was the reason the Seahawks were in front. And the second half was completely different. I'll get to that. But man, Geno in that first half was amazing. I mean, just the pocket presence from him was just, I mean, just the little pocket movement here and there, attacking the line of scrimmage, moving a linebacker, and then flipping it to Tyler Lockett. There was a play, the second touchdown they had, where he broke a tackle, rolled left, and threw a dot in the back left corner of the end zone to Tyler Lockett. I mean, Geno was really in his bag in the first half, which really makes you scratch your head a little bit when you look at the second half. Throughout the game, they had trouble getting DK Metcalf involved. It seemed like they weren't really quite on the same page for most of the game. And then the second half, they couldn't really find anything. The Browns had 8 straight third down stops at one point, and up until the last drive, really, the Browns defense had completely dominated the second half of that game, which you got to give credit to them there, and had dropped 2 or 3 interceptions. They had one on the right sideline that could have easily been a pick six if their cornerback had caught it. And on the Brown side of things, you got to give credit to PJ Walker. I mean, he was one Amari Cooper connection away from putting that game away with 3 minutes left. They were in a position where they needed 1 first down, up 20-17, and he had Amari Cooper up the right sideline and just couldn't hit him. And that's kind of the thing with PJ Walker. I think that's the difference between him and a starting quarterback. But he did all he needed to do in this game, and really, you put it in their defense's hands, and the defense that they have, you feel pretty confident. But Geno was able to drive them down the field and get that clutch touchdown at the end.
Yeah, this was a game I was for sure tuned into. It was a great game. Look, I mean, that Browns defense has been fantastic. The top defense in the NFL for most of this year. But they couldn't quite overcome 3 turnovers. It's hard to win, especially on the road, when you turn the ball over 3 times. I don't need to say that over and over again. Look, I mean, you have to give credit to PJ Walker for his effort. He did throw 2 interceptions, and he lost a fumble. But I mean, the Browns were clinging to a 20-17 lead late in the fourth quarter. They have a championship caliber defense, in my opinion. But to me, I mean, if the Browns don't get a better level of quarterback play, that could all be for nothing. Because when you look at the division, and I'll even say this about my Steelers, there is a clear separation right now with the Bengals and the Ravens and the Steelers and the Browns as it pertains to the level of quarterback play that those teams are getting, and it's not even close. I mean, it's not really comparable. And so Browns played a good game, despite 3 turnovers, despite some issues elsewhere. And Geno, most of the game looking pretty good. They just didn't get the stop when they needed it. And look, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigma, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. he looks more and more like a featured weapon in that offense as the weeks go by, which I think is great for Seattle. And all of a sudden, if you're Seattle, I mean, you think about yesterday, it still feels like they're winning football games, and you have to give them credit for that. And they just went out today and made a major move for another defensive lineman, Leonard Williams from the Giants. But it just feels like it's a sloppy brand of football at times, especially. And Pete Carroll's not going to like this, and I'm sure as good of a coach as Pete Carroll is, he'll get this cleaned up. But if you look at what Seattle was yesterday, untimely penalties on defense that did not help them. 2 illegal use of hands to the face penalties gave Cleveland automatic first downs. They had a pass interference on a 4th down and 2 that extended a Cleveland drive and ended up producing a Browns touchdown. I don't know how many times they were penalized, but I feel like their defense can get a little sloppy at times. I feel like their team as a whole can get a little sloppy at times, a little loose at times. But you look at where you are right now if you're Seattle. Geno Smith's playing good enough football to win. You have a great running back in Kenneth Walker. You have your weapons. You have Metcalf. You have JSN, who's looking more and more like a featured guy. You have Tyler Lockett, who just doesn't seem to age. You just went out. You picked up another guy to beef up that defensive line. You have the athletes in the secondary. All of a sudden, you're sitting at 5-2, first place in your division, with the Niners kind of falling off as of late. And right now, with the way the Niners are playing and the way Seattle just continues to win games, it feels like that division is kind of wide open. And I don't think I would have said that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And quietly, Jason Peters at 41 years old has come in and
that's another. I mean,
really played well at right tackle.
Aggressive. The Seahawks are being aggressive. They know they have a team that can win if Geno Smith plays good football. And credit Pete Carroll, credit that front office. I think they've nailed 2 drafts in a row for the most part. They got their 2 tackles, at least when they're healthy. Love Kenneth Walker. I think JSN will eventually be maybe even a Pro Bowl caliber guy if they start to feature him more. I think he has the potential to be that. I think they've got really, really nice players in that secondary. Bobby Wagner still seems to be performing at a high level at the age like 36 or 37. I don't know how old he is now. Jordan Brooks, their draft pick from a couple years ago from Texas Tech, has really, really come on as of late. He's in year 4, I believe, and he's playing for a little bit of an extension. And I think if he continues this, he's in for a little bit of a payday. He's been a factor for that Seahawks team. Now you bring in Leonard Williams on that defensive front, who can at least maybe help you in the run game. I think in Wosu, their edge rusher has been hurt the past couple of weeks, but when he's been in there, he's been solid. Like, you all of a sudden start to look at this Seahawks team, and if they can clean up those minor details that seem to hurt them at times, I'm not by any means putting them in the tier of the Eagles, the Lions, probably not even the Niners, because I just got to see how that plays out before I put them ahead of the Niners.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It kind of feels like they're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, they're finding a way to win games. Geno has been a little bit more, I guess, his decision making has been a little bit more, shaky at times, but it hasn't cost them. He's, I think, been aggressive at the right times. I think he's willing to, throw it up to DK Metcalf when he gets one-on-one matchup, which is, I think, a good trait to have from your quarterback. When you have the wide receivers that they have, I think the good thing with Geno is he knows when to take those shots. You wouldn't want to just have a guy who's checking it down the whole time. And Geno's making the big plays. I mean, his high level stuff is as high level as it gets.
Yep.
His low level stuff is a little shaky, but I mean, you can live with that when he's giving you those highlight plays where he's rolling out, breaking tackles, and throwing dimes.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's pretty much all we have on that game. Third game we're going to talk about today. This was a doozy. The Falcons 23, the Titans 28. Titans get a big win. To avoid going to 2-8? I don't know why that's not staying up there.
Oh, I think we're probably clicking at the same time.
Yeah, we probably are. Yeah. Did I say 2-8? I meant 2-6. Yeah. Obviously, the big story in this game was Will Levis throwing 4 touchdowns. We saw the Falcons make a quarterback change at halftime, going to Taylor Heineke. That, as I thought most of us expected, provided them some stability offensively. And this comes at a bad time for me personally, because you look at what Will Levis did yesterday. He threw for 238 yards and had more touchdown passes yesterday than Ryan Tannehill had all season. He seemed to have an especially good connection automatically with DeAndre Hopkins, who caught 4 passes for 128 yards and 3 scores. He shined in his debut with the throwback Orioles, Oilers uniforms, which are absolutely sick, in my opinion. He's going to play. The Titans announced he's going to play Thursday against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh now will be without Minkah Fitzpatrick in that secondary, and it's starting to worry me a little bit as a Steelers fan seeing this performance. I don't think they're trading Hopkins or Henry like it was rumored last week at the deadline. I think this is great for Mike Vrabel to have. I mean, he's not going to do this every week. He's a rookie quarterback. He's going to have a rough performance somewhere mixed in here, as all rookies do at some point, if he continues to start. But I thought it was an A- performance for the Titans. They looked good offensively. They were throwing the football downfield. Their defense did enough. As far as the Falcons are concerned, they looked hopeless during the first half. It was another weird first half. They couldn't get anything going offensively. Some of that can be accredited to Titans defense. They totaled 89 yards. Desmond Ridder was sacked 5 times. He had to lead the game with a concussion. So they put in Taylor Heineke. He kind of provided a spark for them offensively. He threw for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. This to me can be chalked up to basically Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins. The Titans get a big win. Now they go to Pittsburgh on a short week, and we'll see what Levis can do on the road on a short week.
Yeah, I think the stat of he has double the touchdowns Ryan Tannehill has this season. I think that one's a little bit misleading. Tannehill has had a couple good games in there with obviously good offensive production. It doesn't matter how you get the scoring, but the thing with Levis that I thought was, really caught my attention was the fact that he got those wide receivers involved much better than what Ryan Tannehill had been able to do. And not just DeAndre Hopkins, but Treylon Burks was getting in on the action. Westbrook-Ikhine got that game, that go-ahead touchdown to put them up to 28 points. I thought he was really spreading the ball around well. I mean, he just looked comfortable. I don't know. I think there's definitely something there, and I gotta apologize a little bit because I think I kind of just wrote him off a little bit after he puts mayonnaise in his coffee. There's no way he can be good in the NFL, right? Not just that, but I think in some ways, I just thought, the Titans, I mean, they took the flyer on this guy. He fell in the draft for a reason. I don't know how good he's going to be, especially year one. But I mean, this game proves, I mean, he's got a legit ceiling there, and some of the deep balls he threw in this game were top tier.
Yeah, I think it's good for Mike Vrabel. As I said, big question marks coming into this game. Their franchise running back's name, Derrick Henry, has been swirling in trade rumors ahead of tomorrow's deadline. Their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, is out with an ankle injury. We don't know when he's going to come back. I don't know if they were true, but Hopkins' name was swirling in trade rumors. They just, in fact, traded away their all-pro safety, Kevin Byard, last week. So when that happened, I was like, okay, they're going to sell. They're selling at the deadline. But now, coming off a bye week, despite all those potential distractions, with the rookie quarterback making his first career start at home against the Falcons, who are in a division race themselves, Mike Vrabel goes to 6-0 in his coaching career following a bye week. And Will Levis had Nashville excited. And I'm sure it was probably, there's always weird dynamics between, Mike Vrabel going up against his former offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith. And this was a week in which everything came up Titans. Now, the last thing I'll mention is Will Levis was pressured. He was under constant duress from the Falcons. Atlanta had 14 quarterback pressures and a pressure percentage of 43.8%. They were getting home. They weren't always able to get him on the ground in time. I don't know how many sacks they ended up with, but it seemed to me on some of those touchdown throws, he had guys in his face the entire day. He was getting hit, knocked to the ground. Awfully impressive performance for a rookie. And I'm interested to see what they do and what they present on Thursday night on a short week. Obviously, Tannehill's not going to be ready for that game. If he can go into Pittsburgh, win that game, and now you're getting what? You're 4-5, I believe it would be. That'd be quite interesting. Desmond Ridder lost a fumble in the second quarter. 12th giveaway this year. That leads the NFL. He was sacked 5 times, threw for just 71 yards, ended up going down with a concussion. They insert Taylor Heineke, and I guess if you're a Falcons fans, you have to hope you can lean on that running game, and Heineke can provide you some more stability offensively. He's kind of a veteran guy at this point. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way. At least he hasn't shown that much in his career. So maybe what's the Falcons record now? They're still atop the NFC South, I believe, or are they?
Yeah, they're sitting at 500 at 4-4.
Okay, interesting. We saw the Saints offense kind of explode yesterday. Saw the Panthers get a win, but obviously they're kind of out of it at this point. The Buccaneers are on a slide. So interesting game. Any closing remarks on that game, or can we move to the next one?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay. Next, Chiefs and Broncos. This was quite interesting.
Yeah, first things first, I think this Broncos team that showed up this week was the Broncos team that I've been expecting since Russ got there. I mean, just not turning the football over, can run the ball. I mean, solid between the 20s, and I mean, in the red zone, they had to kind of fight their demons a little bit in this game once they got into the red zone, but they were able to get enough points. And then great defense. That's really what the recipe was when Russ got there. And it has all gone sour, but in this game, it all came together. So that's really the first time we've seen it come together for this team. I mean, what was I saying 2 weeks ago? It felt like I was basically saying 2 weeks ago, it felt like every time this team needed to make a big play to get a win, they just never did it. And this week they made the plays. They were able to intercept Mahomes twice, I believe. Got a big fumble of Valdez Scantling as well in the red zone. Really good performance from the Broncos. It really didn't feel like the Chiefs played like that horrible. Mahomes was still Mahomes. He still made 4 or 5 of those plays where you just shake your head because you can't stop it. But the Broncos just flat out beat them.
First win against the Chiefs for Denver since week 2 of the 2015 season, which was now over 8 years ago. 16 games they had lost to Kansas City. They came into this game ranked 31st in points allowed, 32nd in yards allowed. Now, before anyone gets mad at me for saying that, stats only tell part of the story. They're not the entire story. So it hadn't been good, obviously, for the Broncos most of the time, but the defense had played better. We had seen signs in recent weeks that all led up to kind of a really, really good performance. They came ready to play. Now, mistakes, let's be honest, it kind of doomed the Chiefs. They turned the ball over 5 times. You can't do that on the road against a division opponent and expect to win, no matter how great your quarterback is. Especially when on the other side, Russell Wilson and co., they weren't flashy. They didn't do anything special, but they capitalized. They played fundamental football. He didn't throw. I don't believe he threw an interception. If he turned the ball over, I didn't see it. He only threw for 114 yards. I mean, if I told you coming into this game that Russell Wilson throws for 114 yards and the Chiefs defense has, I don't know, I lost the sack number, but I mean, that I don't know what I would have told you, but 3 touchdown tosses to 3 different targets. Javonte Williams caught one. Jerry Jeudy caught one, his first of the year. So good for him. And Cortland Sutton caught one with a beautiful contested snag over L'Jarius Sneed. And I thought they played really, really good football, using their first 2 possessions after halftime to milk almost 15 minutes of game time off the clock. I mean, that's how you beat the Chiefs. You keep Mahomes off the field. Don't give him chances to get more possessions than he needs. And obviously, the Chiefs kind of hurt themselves with self-inflicted wounds. The interesting part about this game was early Sunday, they listed Mahomes on the injury report with some kind of illness. I think he was dealing with something, probably wasn't fully 100% if I had to guess. And he didn't really look it in the second half. 8 of 18 for 74 yards. Now, credit a lot of that to that Denver defense. Nick Bonito pressured Mahomes 8 times. Baron Browning had 2 sacks, including a strip sack. It was a dominant defensive performance from Denver, no doubt, with trade rumors galore pertaining to Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons and whoever you want to name on that Broncos defense. But they did a really good job. I believe they had two interceptions, a forced fumble, a recovered punt, and there was one other turnover that I'm forgetting, a muff punt, and one other turnover that I'm forgetting. But when you lose the turnover battle 5-1, and you're on the road, the opposing offense is efficient. They're keeping your offense on the sideline. Your quarterback doesn't have his great stuff. Although you're right, it's Mahomes. You're going to see the great plays, but it wasn't his best performance.
Yeah.
And your defense gets home, they get after Mahomes, and you keep their offense on the sideline, and you score, I believe it was 17 points off those turnovers. You put yourself in great shape, and credit to Denver. All of a sudden, after, think back to where you were however many weeks ago, about a month ago, after giving up 70 to the Dolphins, only giving up 9 to the Chiefs, holding them without an offensive touchdown for the first time in forever, it feels like. At home, at 3-5, going into your bye week, your schedule doesn't lighten up when you come out of the bye week. So I don't know what this means for the future, but obviously a win you can feel really, really good about if you're a Broncos fan. If your defense can continue to play like this coming out of the bye week, you can at least be competitive and stay in football games and have chances to win in the end.
Yeah, exactly. They're 3-5 now. I mean, that if you told me that 3 weeks ago, I mean, I wouldn't believe you. I mean, that they were dead in the water. I mean, they were at 1-5, and it was a bad 1-5. Like it looked horrible. And I mean, this team isn't devoid of talent. I think they're gonna play competitive football the rest of the year. That's the hope, at least.
That's the hope. And look, I mean, I agree with you. They're 3-5. You're going into your bye week. You have to feel good about this. Obviously, you beat the Chiefs. You have to feel good about that. I mean, we'll see. Their schedule isn't easy after the bye. They got to go to Buffalo after their bye week. And then I think they have they could probably beat the Vikings, but then you have like the Texans and a couple other. I think I'm not sure who else they play. I have to look, but we'll see where it goes from here. Good for Sean Payton for getting this win. This at least it felt. You're right. 1-5. It was a terrible 1-5. I mean, they were one of the 3 worst teams in the league 4 weeks ago. And now, I mean, they're playing good defensively. They're much improved defensively. And if your quarterback, Russell Wilson, just drives the bus, you can play competitive football. We're 45 minutes in. We're on a really good pace. So we'll move to our last game of the day. Bengals 49ers. Bengals hand the 49ers their 3rd loss in a row. Where do we want to start on this game? Do we want to talk about the Niners side of it or start with the Bengals looking like a Super Bowl contender?
Well, I mean, we saved the best for last. So we'll continue to save the best for last. Let's start with the Niners side of things. For me personally, I thought Brock Purdy played well for most of this game. You take out 2 throws, particularly that one in the red zone to Logan Wilson kind of hurt, and then throwing that one deep in your own territory to Logan Wilson to give the Bengals instant red zone opportunity. That one really hurt as well. But you take those 2 throws out of the game. I mean, Brock Purdy was throwing strikes the entire game. So I think some of the Brock Purdy slander has to slow down just a little bit. I mean, you got to give credit to the Bengals defense. I mean, they've been doing this to every team they've played the past few weeks. I mean, Lou Anarumo, it feels like as soon as they get like say 3 or 4 weeks of film on any given team, team that they play from that point on, they're going to have a game plan for it. And that's just how it felt. The 49ers really didn't have any of those like easy buttons that they could get from those little screen passes to Christian McCaffrey. They really didn't have that available to them at all. And it's really just Bengals linebacker.
All right. Well, I don't know. It seems like we had an issue there. So we'll see if we can get Emmy back here in a minute. But I'll go ahead and just finish my thoughts on this game with Bengals Niners. Joe Burrow looks in prime form. 28 of 32, 87%, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, all the different receivers, no interceptions. He pretty much looks all the way back. And what makes this even scarier from a Bengals perspective, as Emmy mentioned, was their running game. Joe Mixon got involved. He had a season best 87 rushing yards. Jamar Chase has been a beast the last month or so. He had 100 yards on 10 catches. This was a Cincy team that literally and figuratively, limped to a 1-3 start. 2 of those losses, I believe, coming in division. And now, they've won 4 in a row. They had won 3 in a row coming into Sunday. And they head into what is a primetime Week 9 showdown with the Buffalo Bills. They're playing right now their best football that we've seen them play this year. And I'm interested to see if we'll have them in, I'm sure we probably will, in our Wednesday power rankings. So I think that from a Niners perspective, the defense, they allowed a season worst 31 points. They've lost their 3rd game in a row. I think the bye week comes at a fantastic time. And, they've kind of just struggled, it seems like, to get as much pressure as they were generating the first half of the year. They're not doing as good of a job tackling in the secondary, not getting off the field on those important 3rd and 4th downs. And Trey Hendrickson has continued to make his name as one of the premier pass rushers in the game for the Bengals. He got his 8th sack of the season. He's quietly been just a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks when it comes to a pass rushing perspective. I think the Bengals, they're kind of peaking right now. The Niners, I think their bye week comes at a good time. They got to figure out some things defensively. Hopefully they can get Deebo Samuel back sooner rather than later. I don't put too much stock into this. I think you'd rather go through this now than later on in the season. You're still 5-3 in the thick of it in your division. I think Brock Purdy is playing still pretty good football. He's just had a couple turnovers here and there the past couple of weeks that have proved costly. And we will see what the Niners can do coming out of their bye week. So those are my thoughts on Bengals Niners. We can, we'll see where it goes from here. I got to figure out what's going on with this Emmy situation because I'm not frozen on my end. He froze up on my end, but he says I'm frozen on his end. So it's kind of like I don't know what's happening. So I'm going to tell him that real fast. Well, it looks like we might have Emmy coming back. I don't know what's going on. Again, I saw him freeze up on my end. He says I froze up on his end. So I don't know what's going on tonight. Experiencing some technical difficulties. Again, I just gave you my take on Bengals, Niners. Those were our 5 games. Texans, Panthers, Browns, Seahawks, Falcons, Titans, Chiefs, Broncos, and Bengals, Niners. There were some other fun games to watch mixed within that group of games. Again, no teams on a bye this week. In week 8 of the NFL season, we got all 32 teams playing. I believe that will happen again in week 12. Weirdly, so obviously it's fun when you can get, you get to see all the teams. But Steelers, Jaguars, I have a lot to say on that. I won't get into that right now. Philly beating Washington. Washington always seems to play them tough, though. Obviously, the Chargers got a nice win on Sunday Night Football. I thought they played maybe their best game overall this year. And there were a couple other games mixed in there. Obviously, the Ravens beat the Cardinals. Rough performance from Josh Dobbs. We'll see when Kyler Murray could potentially return. Yeah, we're in an interesting spot right now in the NFL. We'll have our power rankings on Wednesday night. And we're going to have Dithole and possibly a trade deadline episode coming up as well, depending on how much action we get tomorrow by 4 p.m. Eastern time, I believe, is the trade deadline. So let us know how your team did in week 8. Who's the best team in the NFL right now? Who are your top 5 teams in the NFL right now? And we will we'll see you on Wednesday for our power rankings episode. We'll see if Emmy can get back in here before the end of the episode. There he is. So again, as I was saying, I don't know what happened. I saw you freeze up on my end, so I didn't know when you were finished speaking, but obviously I froze up on your end. So I guess it was just kind of a malfunction.
I think I was the one that had the connection issues, because it said after a little while it said oops, you've disconnected, trying to reconnect, or something like that.
Well, I gave my take on to sum it up. Basically, after I realized that you had the connection issues and there was some technical difficulty, I gave my little take on Bengals Niners. Basically, what I said is Joe Burrow looks healthy again. He was elite yesterday. What makes it even more dangerous is the fact that Joe Mixon in that running game got going. He went for 87 yards. Burrow is the unquestioned straw that stirs their drink. 28 of 32, 283 yards and 3 touchdowns to 3 different receivers. They've won 4 in a row. They're going into a primetime Week 9 showdown with the Bills next week, which will be quite interesting, a rematch of the divisional game of last year. Burrow and the Bengals are playing their best football of the season so far by far, and it feels like that defense with Trey Hendrickson and those other pass rushers, Louis Anarumo, they're finding themselves as well. Mike Hilton is all over the place when I watch the Bengals in that secondary. They were a nightmare for Brock Purdy. They generated pressure on 36.4% of the Niners' offensive snaps. Hendrickson could have been even more disruptive had he not been sidelined with an ankle injury in the second quarter. He did come back later on in the game, and he continued to make an impact, but he was out there for a short while. And it just seems like for the Niners right now, they're not quite doing the things that they did well early on in the season quite as well. For whatever reason, they're not tackling as well in the secondary. They're not playing as aggressive or as physical. The level of physicality and intensity on that defensive front, they're not getting home as much to the opposing quarterback. And without Deebo Samuel, it kind of creates a big hole in that offense. So, as I said before, you came back, I'm not worried too much about the Niners yet.
Yeah.
But obviously, there is going to be some movement in our power rankings, I believe, on a Wednesday night. So, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. If I'm the Niners, I'm more concerned about the defense.
Yeah.
Because the offense will be fine. You're going to get Debo back here pretty soon. This is a defensive football team, and I'd like to see a little bit more Nick Bosa. I'd like to see a little bit more, just getting after the quarterback a little bit. But I mean, the first half they were playing their quarters coverage that they like to do, and Joe Burrow was just picking them apart. Second half to start, they go man coverage. Joe Burrow immediately scrambles for 25 yards. So it just felt like Joe Burrow just had to answer for everything. And I really think that just says more about what the Bengals are than the 49ers. But it is worth noting that that's two straight weeks where the Niners defense has been a little bit more leaky than usual.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was saying before you came back, talked about some of the other games. We had the Eagles beat the Commanders in what was a competitive game for a while. Jaguars beat the Steelers 20-10 in what was an ugly slog of a bad weather game for most of it. The injuries being the most worrisome part coming out of that game for Pittsburgh. But the Jaguars are hot. They've won 5 straight. I believe they have the second or third best record in the NFL since week 14 of last year. So Jaguars are obviously, as we expected them to be, a really good football team. ETN has been quite impressive. He had a 56-yard touchdown reception yesterday where they split him out wide and he just ran kind of like a go route down the sideline and they hit him as the safety took a bad angle. There were some other games. I mean, the Ravens took care of business against the Cardinals, who Josh Dobbs had a rough performance. I'm interested to see when maybe they can get Kyler Murray back. Ravens look like potentially a number 1 seed in the AFC right now. They're just rolling people. What else happened yesterday? Chargers got a good win over the Bears, albeit, but I mean, they needed that. I thought they played
They needed a win.
I thought they played a pretty good, well-rounded football game at home against a team they should beat and they did. Yeah, I mean, it was a great day in the NFL. This was one of the few weeks where in the middle of the season where no team actually had a bye. It's kind of set up weird that way. We got to see all 32 play, and my last remark will be the Rangers defeated the Diamondbacks tonight in Game 3 of the World Series 3-1. So they take a 2-1 series lead. We'll see what happens in Game 4 tomorrow.
Yeah, another dominant bullpen day for the Rangers.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really excited for next week in football. We get, as you mentioned, Bengals, Bills, but also Cowboys, Eagles. That's going to be Monday Night Football. That'll be an amazing game, hopefully. Amazing game for my Cowboys, hopefully. But yeah, we're off and running in the NFL season. That's for sure. We're not in the early stages anymore. This is the point where we pretty much know who each of these football teams are for the most part. We're not going to see, any huge turnarounds or huge, surprises at this point.
You might see a turnaround, but I think in terms of what these football teams are, you kind of know what their identities are and how they're best suited to win games. You kind of know who. I kind of have a feeling of who those Super Bowl contenders are, who are the teams that are going to be fighting for wild cards, who are the bad teams, et cetera, et cetera. Now we've seen teams like go from 3-5 to.
Yeah, I'm not saying there isn't going to be any turnarounds, but I'm saying like you got to show signs of life up to this point to even, be able to make a turnaround like that. So it's not going to be a completely out of nowhere type of turnaround.
Yeah.
Like the Chargers, for example, they've shown signs of life at least. So if they turn this thing around and win 10 games, I wouldn't be, I would be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be entirely shocked.
No, and nobody should be shocked. Like they should win 10 games. If they don't, there are major issues. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We went over a little over an hour, but that's okay. We had some technical issues in there.
Yeah.
You mentioned the NFL season's going strong. College football season's also going strong. We've got a great week of games coming up in that in college as well. LSU, Bama. And if you look at the Big 12 slate this week is going to go a long way in determining who's going to play in Arlington. It's not going to be the end-all, be-all, but when it comes to head-to-head tiebreakers and stuff like that, it's going to have a say in who's going to get to play in Arlington. There are some other great games mixed in there as well. We'll have a discussion off camera to see what we're going to do about Dit Hole, what we're going to do about this trade deadline episode that we're going to do, but I don't know how it's going to be structured or run depending on how much movement occurs tomorrow in the league. It could change a lot based on that. And then we'll obviously have power rankings on Wednesday. So lots of content coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'll let you sign us off, I guess.
Well, I guess just like the Chiefs' chances of extending their 16-game winning streak over the Denver Broncos to 17 on Sunday, and just like the Falcons' chances of stopping DeAndre Hopkins, we are gone. Peace out.